Hello, my name is Teresa Olsen. I am a sophomore at Bishop Carroll and have been a parishioner of St. Anne my whole life. I was raised in what seemed to be a normal Catholic family. I have always gone to a Catholic school, beginning at St. Anne Preschool, up until this point at Bishop Carroll. As I grew up, my faith was just a regular part of my life. I went to Mass on Sundays with my family, learned about the religion in school, and prayed before I went to sleep. I didn't really have a connection with God, or at least one that I could sense. God to me was just sort of there, not really present in my life, but more of a distant, unknown force whom I might get to meet one day in heaven as long as I received the sacrament of reconciliation and tried to behave. This distance between God and I, in my mind and heart, only grew as I got older. When I began to mature and began to try to develop who I was as a person, I struggled with how to incorporate my faith into my life. I couldn't find anyone on fire with God's love and passionate in their faith to turn to as a role model. I began to believe what society was telling me about Catholicism. My outlook became that the Catholic faith was old and outdated, and that it couldn't help me decide my stance on things I was facing in the world. My first real encounter with God, the moment I was finally able to feel His presence and see His hand in the world, was an experience I had at Totus Tuus summer camp. The week-long away camp I had been attending since 5th grade had begun to transform my faith in the wonderful examples set by the camp counselors. But it wasn't until the summer before my 8th grade year that I began to understand God's true presence in my life. I remember laying on the dock and looking up at the stars with one of my favorite counselors. It was the night we had all-night adoration, so it was probably close to 2 a.m. All of a sudden, as I stared at the stars, I realized the beauty contained in them could only have come from a brilliant artist. I was able to truly recognize God's hand in the arrangement of the stars, and from then on saw it everywhere, in nature, in the people around me, and in the Catholic faith. This changed how I saw the world around me and the people and relationships in my life. But I still struggled with prayer and feeling as close to God as I had that night. That part of my faith didn't change until the season of Lent my freshman year. I had gotten better in prayer by this point, but I still struggled with feeling God's presence in prayer and what He was saying to me. During Lent, though, I took part in the busiest person's retreat in our parish. Every day at school or at home on the weekends, I prayed Lectio Divina. I went during my lunch period at school into the chapel at Bishop Carroll. At home on the weekends, I went in my room to pray, and in the scriptures, I got to know God, how He works in our lives, and how much He loved me and wanted me to stay close to Him. The meetings with my retreat guide kept me accountable for praying every day, and the specific readings helped me to enter more deeply into this season of Lent. I finally felt close to God and could finally talk to Him in prayer. Not only did the connection I made with God during the busy person's retreat change my view of the faith and my relationship with God, but it also changed my outlook on my life in general. I was able to reflect on how the people in my life and the things I experienced could lead me closer to God. I began to be grateful for even the things I might not have wanted to happen in my life, because I could trust in God's plan for me and the idea that He allowed even bad things to happen because I could learn from them and be strengthened in my faith. I also began to recognize how the little joyful coincidences of life were small gifts from God in His great, merciful plan for my life. I grew in the courage to live my faith out loud and learned ways to infuse it into my life. From then, up until this point in my life, I continue to try and see where God is leading me through prayer. I have the hope and the trust that whatever He might ask of me, whether it be something I dread or something I'm excited to do, He is leading me along the path that will lead to eternal joy and peace in union with Him. I still struggle with setting aside time to pray and facing things in my life in a way that reflects my faith and proclaims it through my actions. And the times I start to give in to the urges to be lazy and complacent in my faith and how I live it, God always gives me a little push back towards Him. Sometimes this comes from experiences in my life, people I encounter, or something within myself. But whatever it be, I have to make the choice to recognize that it is from God and to let that guide my actions after that point. Every day, I must take make the choice to love God actively and allow that to shape my life. Thank you for your time. Please pray for me as I will be keeping all of you in my prayers.